All right, so we just left off with the quick transitions movie, and in this movie I want to talk a little bit more about making and editing different effects in AVID, more than the quick dissolves from the last movie. So since the last movie, I've added a few video segments to the timeline just to add a little bit longer sequence. And if you remember, all we're doing is double clicking to load it into the source, add a few in and out, and then hit V on the keyboard to splice it in. And I'm patched V1 to V1, so they all went into V1 to add a little bit more video segments to play with. Now, there's really no rhyme or reason in between each of these clips. I just added them in, okay? And remember, we can always hover over a clip and remove an effect if we wanted to. So we're going to go to the project window, click on it to activate it. We know that it's activated because the top 3 buttons are colored. We're going to go over to the 4th tab, the effect tab, and it will look, AVID gives us a long list of different effects that you can add to your video segments and audio. If we click, they're just organized by different categories. So I'm going to go to this edge wipe, and I'm going to grab this vertical open. And if you click and hold and drag, you can position these effects either on the segment itself or right in between. So this one's a transition, and by default it does a 1-second transition. And if I just scrub, it opens it up and it shows us the very next video segment. Now, if I'm hovered, my time bar indicator is very close to that effect. I'm going to zoom in to show you. And we'll notice too a couple things. All the effects so far that I've added, all these little purple boxes, have a green dot. A green dot is telling us that AVID can show that effect in real time. If you ever add an effect and it has a blue dot, that is AVID telling you that you need to render that effect before it can show it to you in real time. So in order to render it, you're just, again, very close to that effect. You right click on your mouse and then you can say render at position or expert render at position. In this case, they're green, so we're good. And I'm just hovered over, and we're going to go to this button here called the effect mode. And then I'm going to zoom back out here before I do that. And when I do that, it brings up the effect editor. The effect editor gives us, as we notice, it's only selected that effect, only the parameters that we can change for that effect. Now, once we're in the effect editor, you'll notice that our record monitor on the right is just the effect itself, okay? And when we can see that this effect has a keyframe at the start and a keyframe at the end. And right now we're right about the middle, okay? So if I click and drag this over and look back over into the effect editor, we'll notice that the foreground level is about 2. I'm going to go right to the middle again, and we'll look back at the effect editor, and we notice that it's about halfway through that transition, and all the way at the end, it's almost completed at the end. All right, so it kind of makes some sense. We can look at this effect editor at the very bottom, and you can change the duration of the effect if you wanted to. So I'm going to click inside there and type 10. We can make it a very short 10-frame effect. I'm going to click and drag, and that happens very quickly. I'm going to Command Z to undo that because I kind of like the 1-second duration. But now, as I did that, now I'm back into the timeline, and I'm out of, if you notice, we're not selected on the effect anymore. Now we are not in that effect editor anymore. So that can drive you a little crazy. So if you have to, again, get back into it, just hover right over that effect, go back to that effect mode, and now you're right back into it. Okay? That is one way to add several of these different effects. Now let's add another one. We can go back over here. I'm going to go to back to my project window, back to my effects tab, and I'm going to go to the image category, and I'm going to grab resize. And if you click and hold and drag, it adds that effect, and you think, oh, great, a purple box. What did it do? You're absolutely right. It didn't do anything. You have to tell it what you want it to do. So you have to, again, hover over it, go back to that effect mode, and then now it's giving us the parameters that we can change for that particular effect. All right? Now, we're going to do some basic keyframe in this, and if we notice, again, we're right in the middle. So if we want to change parameters in any of our effects, we want to get in the habit of moving our time bar all the way to the beginning of that effect, creating a keyframe, and now starting off fresh. So what I want to do is, for this one, I want to play with the background and the scaling. So I want to keep it where it's at now, but maybe about a quarter of the way through, roughly, about there. I'm going to hit fixed aspect on the effect editor, and I'm going to change it from 100 to about 50. Okay, and then, oops, you know what I did? You see how this keyframe was selected? It actually changed that one. So I'm going to Command Z, and I'm going to go back to this one. Perfect. And now I'm going to, about here, add another one. add a keyframe first. You can add the keyframe here with that button, or you can add the apostrophe key. Now I'm going to bring it down to about there, and I'm going to change my background a bit. Perfect. And what you can do with keyframes, now that I like this one, I want to keep it that way for a little bit of the time. So we can, once it's selected in pink, we can hit Command C on the keyboard to copy it. Go down further, maybe about here. Perfect. Command V, like Victor, to paste it. And then I want the beginning and the ending to be the same. So I'm going to click on the first keyframe, Command C to copy, go all the way to the end, Command V to paste. So now, when we play this,
dirt roads and pretty rugged country, including a quick dip in the Saskatchewan River.
Okay, so I'm going to Command S to save the file. So it starts off at 100, it scales down to about 50, it changes the background color, it holds those parameters for both the scale and the color all this time until it reaches here, and then it goes back to slowly to 100 and then back to black for the background. Okay, that's one way to do some basic keyframe in AVID, okay, and especially on this effect. Now these are just basic keyframes. If you wanted to get a little further into keyframes, in the effect editor, if I click on it, you can see this little graph here. You can open that up. It gives you a lot more information, and you can identify some effects you'll add will have more than 20 levels or 20 changes that you can make for different parameters in the effect. Okay, so you can, by doing this basic keyframe, it just adds a keyframe to all of the sections. Even though we didn't do anything for position or crop, it still added it. By accessing this keyframe graph, you can identify which keyframes you want and which ones you want to leave alone. Okay, but that's probably a little bit more advanced. We'll start off with these first. But if you wanted to, you can open up groups, and right down here at the add a keyframe, if you right click, you can say add keyframes to active groups or only open groups, and it'll only add those keyframes once in the effect editor if you have that selected. Okay, so I'm going to close that back up because we're not going to do anything too crazy, but that's that. So I'm good. I'm happy with that. Now I want to show you how you can. I made fun of my title earlier. So how do you change your title? If you, let's say I misspelled his name. First, it's on V2, so I'm going to patch V1 to V2. I have my blue timeline bar positioned over my title. I'm going to go back to that effect mode. And right at the very top of the effect editor, you can hit Edit Title. And when you do, this little pop-up will show up. And you don't want to go to Marquee. That's a different program in AVID. We're just going to keep it simple with the title tool. I'm going to hit No here, and then here I am. So I'm going to select my text tool, highlight my text, change my fill here, maybe to white. That sounds good. File, save title. I'll save it as number 2 here. Perfect. And now I'm very happy, a lot happier with that color instead of the orange that we had earlier. Okay. So the effect mode can work in multiple ways. You can also add effects in multiple effects on different video segments. So I'm going to go back to my image here. I'm going to add a flop. Typically when you add something and then you add something else, AVID will replace the something else and you no longer see the flop. I'm going to Command Z that back. If you add the flop, let's say you really wanted it to be flipped, that particular video segment, and you wanted to add a color effect to it, if I Option click and drag, now I have both the flop and the color effect. But you think, well, again, what happened? Again, you got to go to that effect mode, change the parameters. So, and why isn't it not showing us anything? Because I'm on V2 still, and AVID's telling us where your time bar is. There's nothing on V2, lady, so you've got to switch it. So I'm going to click out of here, patch V1 to V1, go back to my effect mode, and now I see that color effect. Okay, so we can do things like desaturate it, maybe add, that's a little too much. Okay, something like that. Okay, so if you want to add multiple effects, you can just Option drag multiple effects onto the different video segments. If by chance you double click, you're going into the nest of that effect. If you double click again, you're at the raw footage. So first we added the flop, and then we added that color effect. To get out of that nest, if you notice it says 2111, you just double click out and you're back out of that nest. Okay, I'm going to Command S to save the file. You can also add effects to video tracks. So I'm going to patch video 1 to video 2. Let's say we wanted to add that color effect right on video 2. I'm going to go to my effect mode, change the saturation, add sort of a tint to it, perfect. And then all the trimming tools that you've learned earlier, you can use them to trim out certain sections. So if I go back to home, function left arrow or the home key, make an in and an out, right? And now if I hit Z on the keyboard to extract this, or excuse me, lift it, now my first couple clips are okay, and then my last ones have this color effect. Okay, so play in AVID, have fun, add effects, add multiple effects, change the order of them in the effect editor, see what they do. You'll be surprised at what AVID can make happen for some of your video segments, and have fun. Thank you for watching.